Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us a fascinating challenge this time.
Oh, yeah.
Exploring the core of Martin Heidegger's being and time. I mean, this is a massive book, hugely influential, but let's be honest, incredibly dense stuff from the 20th century.
Definitely not light reading.
Right. So we've waded through a whole stack of analyses to try and pull out the crucial insights from this 1927 work. The goal is really to make sense of his complex ideas and, well, his unique language, too.
Exactly. Think of this as your maybe shortcut to understanding some really pivotal concepts in continental philosophy. Our goal is just to unpack what Heidegger's really getting at in Being and Time, hopefully in a way that resonates.
Okay.
And at its heart, the book grapples with a question that might seem obvious at first, but it has these huge implications. What does it actually mean for something to be?
Okay, so Heidegger kicks off with this idea, right, that the question of being, the Seinsfrage, he calls it, has been sort of, well, forgotten or at least neglected in Western thought since, like, Plato and Aristotle.
Pretty much, yeah.
So his big project in Being and Time is to really dig into the sin of this simple word is that we use constantly. It's not just about listing things that exist, but understanding the underlying sense of existence itself.
And what's really cool is how he starts. It's with this simple observation, something we all notice. We say a table is, okay, but then we say the number 7 is, or happiness is.
Right. Totally different kinds of is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Clearly, the way a table exists is just fundamentally different from how a number exists, or, how a feeling like happiness exists. So Heidegger wants to find the fundamental unity, what he calls the focal sense. The Sinn von Sein überhaupt.
The common thread.
Yeah, the common thread that ties together all these different ways of being. It's like he's looking for the root meaning behind all these uses of is.
And it's really important to get this from the start. He's not just like casually wondering about this. He's making a very specific interpretive choice here. He's framing the whole investigation around this idea of the sense, the sin of being, basically assuming there is some core unified meaning to uncover.
And if we kind of zoom out for a second, you can see he's not just retreading old ground.
Yeah.
He throws down a pretty big idea right at the start, that time provides the very framework, the horizon, for how we understand what it means for anything to be.
So not just that things exist in time.
No, deeper than that. It's that our understanding of existence itself is fundamentally shaped by our understanding of time. It's baked in.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. To even start exploring this link between being and time, Heidegger says, hold on, we need to do some prep work, a preparatory investigation.
Right.
He felt that traditional philosophy ontology went wrong by analyzing being just through abstract concepts or by treating everything like it's just there, just present at hand for hand and height, like a hammer just sitting on a bench, unused.
Which leads to a crucial question. Who is it that's asking this question about being? And Heidegger's answer is Dasein.
Dasein, his special term.
Exactly. His term for the human individual, us. What makes Dasein unique, unetically unique, he says, is that our own existence, our own being, is actually an issue for us. We grapple with it.
We care about it.
We care about it, and we have some kind of understanding of being already, even if it's vague. So for Heidegger, understanding Dasein's specific way of existing is the absolutely necessary first step to understanding being in general. You have to start with the questioner.
And the reason this question of being the Seinsfrage got forgotten, as he puts it, isn't just some academic mistake.
No, it's deeper.
It's tied directly to how we, as Dasein, actually live our lives day to day. He talks about this tendency we have towards fallenness for Fallenheit, falling into the anonymous public world of the Das Moment. When we're in that mode, we just get swept up in everyday stuff and, well, we avoid thinking about these bigger questions of existence.
So the key takeaway here, the analysis of Dasein isn't just a handy place to start for Heidegger, it's essential. It helps us understand why we lost sight of the question of being in the first place. Right. By looking at our own way of existing, we can dig up the roots of this obscuring, this forgetting. And that brings us to what he calls the fundamental analytic of Dasein. That's the core prep work of the book.
Okay, so Dasein, he defines it as being there. It's a very deliberate, kind of clunky neologism, right?
Very deliberate. He wanted to ditch all the baggage that comes with words like subject or mind or consciousness.
Well, that Cartesian stuff.
Exactly. Dasein is the being that exists there, specifically in the world. And it's the being that can give us access to the meaning of being. And a key feature he points out right away is mindness, Gemeinigkeit.
Mindness.
Your being is always your own. It's not interchangeable. And you understand yourself fundamentally in terms of possibilities, what you can be.
Which leads straight into the fundamental way Dasein exists, being in the world in der Weltsein.
Huge concept. This is a major shift. Heidegger is completely rejecting that old picture of a separate mind looking at it as a separate world of objects.
A subject-object split.
Gone. For him, your very being is your engagement, your involvement within a world. Doing things, caring about things, your practical life that's ontologically more basic than just standing back and thinking about things.
So the in being in the world isn't like water being in a glass.
Not at all. It means familiarity, dwelling, involvement, being caught up with things, and concern bis origin. So the key insight, you're not a detached spectator. You are fundamentally part of your world. Your being is tangled up with your actions and concerns right there in your environment.
Right. And that totally changes how we should think about the world, too. It's not just, the sum total of all the stuff out there.
Definitely not.
World for Heidegger is the meaningful context, the web of significance that's structured by your projects, your concerns.
It's your environment as it matters to you.
Yeah. So when you encounter things, you mostly see them not as neutral objects just lying there, presence at hand, Auffandenheit, but as tools, as equipment that are ready to hand Sinnenheit for whatever you're doing.
Like the hammer example, you don't usually see it as just wood and metal.
You see it as for hammering. Its meaning comes from its role in your activity. That's the primary way we encounter things.
Exactly. And then Heidegger explores what he calls existentialia. These aren't like categories you apply to objects like red or heavy.
No.
They are the fundamental structures of your being as Dasein, how you exist. And the big overarching structure that holds them all together is care, Sorge.
Okay, care. Let's dig into that. Sorge. He breaks it down, right, into 3 interconnected aspects or moments.
That's right. 3 moments of care.
First, there's existentiality. Existentiality. This is about your character as possibility Möglichsein and understanding for Shin. You're always sort of leaning forward, ahead of yourself, projecting towards what you could become.
Your essence lies in your existence. Existence, he says. You are your possibilities. That's key.
Possibility. Then second.
Second is facticity, Factizität. This is your thrownness, Geworfenheit.
Thrownness. I like that term.
Yeah, it captures it well. You just find yourself already thrown into a particular world, a particular history, a situation you didn't choose. It's that it is of your being, your past, your limits, the concrete circumstances you start with.
The hand you're dealt, basically.
Exactly, the hand you're dealt.
And third is fallenness, Verfallenheit. We touched on this. It's that tendency to get absorbed in the everyday hustle and bustle.
Yep. Getting caught up in immediate concerns and interpreting yourself through the average norms, the lens of the Vedas man.
Getting lost in the crowd, in a way.
Kind of. Getting lost in the day-to-day, the routine, the chatter.
Okay, so existentiality, possibility, future, facticity, thrownness, past, fallenness, everyday, present. But you said they're interconnected.
Crucially, they aren't separate compartments. They are interwoven aspects of the single, unified structure of care, Sorge. Think of care not just as worry, though it includes that, but as the fundamental structure of your engaged existence.
Engaged existence.
Your inherent drive to engage with possibilities, future existentiality, based on your given situation, past facticity, usually happening within the absorption of the present, fallenness.
And he ties this structure of care directly to time, then.
Absolutely. As he develops the argument, he shows how existentiality is oriented towards the future, facticity towards the past, your having been, and fallenness towards the present way we typically engage with things. Care is fundamentally temporal.
Wow. Okay. This structure then leads to a really important distinction he makes, doesn't it? The authentic versus the inauthentic.
Yes, eigently versus uneigently. And it's vital to understand these aren't simple moral judgments like good or bad. They describe different modes of existing, different ways you relate to your own being, which this whole analysis reveals.
How does he start describing this?
He starts by looking at average everydayness, Alltäglichkeit, which is just how we are, approximately, and for the most part, our default mode.
Our normal state.
Pretty much. And he argues that this everyday existence is largely characterized by inauthenticity. In this mode, you're typically absorbed in the world, dealing with things, and understanding yourself through the impersonal lens of the Vedas man.
And the Vedas man needs a bit more unpacking. It's not like a specific group of people, is it?
No, not at all. It's the anonymous, public way reality gets interpreted, the sort of average way of Seeing things, judging things, acting. It's the one just doesn't do that, or one enjoys this sort of thing.
The background chatter, the conventional wisdom.
Exactly, the public norm. And this can lead to conformity, a kind of leveling down of your unique individual possibilities. You just go along with the trends, maybe without really asking if they resonate with you.
So inauthenticity is basically being swept along by DOS man.
That's a big part of it. It's not necessarily like morally wrong in itself. It's more like our default setting. It's a tendency to sort of flee from confronting our own freedom, our own finitude, especially our being towards death, which we'll get to in our own most possibilities.
So you get lost in the immediate stuff.
Yeah, lost in the everyday tasks, the distractions, the interpretations handed to you by the they.
Okay, so what's the alternative? Authenticity.
Authenticity, Eigentlichkeit. This isn't something you just find. It's a road of being. You have to actively achieve, maybe even wrest from inauthenticity, as some analyses put it.
How?
It involves choosing yourself, taking ownership of your own being. It means facing up to your own possibilities, especially the big one, death, your finitude, and taking responsibility for your existence in light of that. Authenticity is about making your existence truly your own. The German eigen means own.
So it's not about finding some secret true self buried inside.
No, that's a common misunderstanding. Heidegger thinks you are your existence, your potential. Authenticity isn't finding a fixed essence. It's an ongoing act or process of choosing and owning your possibilities, especially as you grapple with your finitude and the constant pull of the they. It's a fundamental shift in how you exist.
Okay, so if inauthenticity is the default, what pushes you or what can push you towards authenticity?
Heidegger talks about fundamental moods, or Stimmungen, that can disclose our situation more profoundly. And the key one is anxiety, angst.
Angst. Not just being scared, right?
Right. He's very careful to distinguish angst from fear, Furcht. Fear always has a specific object. You're afraid of the dog, of failing the test, whatever.
Okay.
But angst, for Heidegger, is different. It's this more pervasive, unsettling feeling that doesn't have a specific object in the world. You could almost say its object is being in the world itself. It's that vague sense of unease, of groundlessness, about the sheer fact of your existence and your responsibility for it.
That feeling of uncanniness.
Exactly. Uncanniness, Unheimlichkeit. Literally not at homeness. Angst reveals that the familiar world can suddenly seem strange and that you're sort of thrown into this existence without ultimate grounding.
And this anxiety, this angst can actually be productive.
Potentially, yes. That's the insight. Angst can trigger a move towards authenticity precisely because it reveals your fundamental situation so starkly. Your thrownness, your contingency, the fact that you have to make choices, that uncanny feeling, it individualizes you.
How does it individualize?
It pulls you back from the comforting anonymity of the they. In anxiety, you can't rely on the usual explanations or distractions. You're faced with your existence, your possibilities, your finitude. It confronts you with your potentiality for being.
And the authentic response to that confrontation is
what Heidegger calls resoluteness and Entschlossenheit. This means decisively committing to your own throne being. It means choosing your possibilities authentically, making them your own, all while anticipating and accepting your finitude.
Okay, resolute. But you mentioned the they isn't all bad.
Right. It's important not to paint it as purely negative. The they provides the shared background, the language, the practices, the intelligibility that makes everyday life and communication possible. You can't just step outside it completely.
So authenticity isn't about becoming some kind of hermit.
Not necessarily. It's more about developing a self-aware relationship to that public world, to das Man. It's about consciously choosing when to go along, when to deviate, when to appropriate public meanings authentically rather than just being passively carried along.
Got it. So all these aspects, possibility, thrownness, falling, the potential for authenticity, the role of anxiety, resoluteness, they all come together under that umbrella term, care or Sorge.
Exactly. It's the unifying structure. Care isn't just an emotion for Heidegger. It's the ontological structure, the fundamental way you are. It encompasses all your ways of being in the world.
And it integrates those three things. Existentiality, ahead of itself, future. Facticity, already in a world, past. And fallenness, alongside entities present.
Precisely. Care is that dynamic unity. Being ahead of yourself, projecting possibilities, while always already being in a world, your history, your situation, and currently being absorbed alongside the things and people you encounter. Future, past, present, all interwoven in concerned engagement.
And you stress Sorge isn't just worry.
Right. It's a technical ontological term. It signifies that Dasein's being is fundamentally characterized by concern about its own being. Dasein is a being which is concerned in its being about that being.
We care about existing.
Fundamentally, this concernful engagement is more basic than detached knowing. Even something like scientific curiosity, Heidegger might argue, is rooted in a kind of charis, a concern for understanding, for uncovering truth.
Didn't he mention some old fable about care?
Yeah, the ancient fable of Cura, or Care, who shapes a human being out of clay, and then Jupiter, Earth, and Time argue over who the being belongs to. Saturn Time rules that Care should possess the human throughout life, Earth receive the body after death, and Jupiter the spirit.
What was his point with that?
For Heidegger, this fable showed a kind of pre-philosophical intuitive understanding that engaged concern, care, is what defines human existence, even more fundamentally than reason. He positions homo cura, the being of care, as more fundamental than the traditional animal rationale, the rational animal.
So our caring, our engagement, is core to being human.
That's the idea. It's right there in our myths and stories.
And this structure of care, this concern, is tied to finitude.
Deeply. The concern about our being arises, Heidegger suggests, precisely because our being is finite. It stretches between birth and death, it's temporal. The awareness, even implicitly, of our mortality underpins this fundamental structure of care.
Which brings us back to time, temporality, Zeitlichkeit.
Exactly. Temporality, Zeitlichkeit, is Heidegger's interpretation of the meaning of care. And it's intended to be the foundation for understanding being itself. But he makes a crucial distinction here.
Between
Zeitlichkeit, this fundamental ontological temporality that is the structure of Dasein's being, and the ordinary, common sense, or vulgar way we think about time.
Like time as a line of nows, one after the other. Clock time.
Yeah, time is a linear sequence of present moments stretching infinitely back and forward. Heidegger thinks that's a derivative understanding, abstracted from the more fundamental Zeitlichkeit.
So what is Zeitlichkeit like then? He calls it ecstatic, right?
Yes, ecstatic temporality. Not ecstatic like overjoyed, but from the Greek ekstasis, meaning standing outside oneself. It describes temporality as a dynamic unity of three ecstasies, three ways Dasein stands out towards.
Future, past, present.
Exactly. The future, Zukunft, the past, Gewissenheit, having been, and the present, Gegenwart. But they're not just sequential points. They interpenetrate, they form a dynamic unity.
Okay, tell me more about these ecstasies. Future is primary.
In authentic temporality, yes. The future, Zukunft, is primary. It relates to Dasein's being ahead of itself, its projection into possibilities, its orientation towards its potentiality for being, including its own death. Heidegger says Dasein comes towards itself from the future. It's about running ahead towards possibilities.
And the past, Gewissenheit.
The past, or more accurately, having been, Gewissenheit, relates to Dasein's thrownness. It's the already being in a world that Dasein always is. It's not just stuff that's over and done with. It's the past that you are, the history you inherit and take over as you project into the future.
Like how my past experiences shape the possibilities I even see now.
Precisely. Your having been shapes your coming towards.
And the present, Gegenwart.
The present arises from the interplay of future and past. It's Dasein's engagement with entities within the world, making them present in a particular way based on his projects and concerns. An authentic present, for Heidegger, is one that arises from a resolute projection towards the future, making the current situation emerge in a clear way.
So this ecstatic temporality, it means time isn't just a container we live inside.
Absolutely not. Time is the very structure of Dasein's existence. You don't exist in time. You are temporal through and through. Your being unfolds or stretches itself out across these ecstasies.
And this is the meaning of care.
Yes. Temporality is the ontological meaning of care. That tripartite structure of care we talked about ahead of itself, existentiality, already, and facticity, being alongside, fallenness, is grounded in the ecstatic unity of future, past, and present.
Okay, wow. So the whole huge analysis of Dasein, its being in the world, care, authenticity, it all leads to temporality.
Which was meant to be the key. The ultimate aim of the whole project, the driving force behind analyzing Dasein, was to establish time specifically, this ecstatic temporality as the possible horizon for any understanding whatsoever of being.
The horizon for understanding is...
The idea was that we can only grasp what it means for anything to be by understanding it through the lens of time, ultimately grounded in Dasein's temporality.
He didn't quite finish it, did he? Being and time is famously incomplete.
That's the big issue. The crucial third division of Part 1, which was supposed to make the leap from Dasein's temporality, Zeitlichkeit, to time itself, Zeit or temporality, as the horizon for being in general, sein Überhaupt. Well, it was never published.
So the book just stops.
It ends with the question basically hanging in the air. Does time itself reveal itself as the horizon of being? A massive cliffhanger.
Why wasn't it finished? Do we know?
It's complex. Heidegger seemed to struggle with making that final step, connecting the specific temporality of human existence to a universal claim about being itself. Some say he later felt the Dasein analytic approach had limitations. This incompletion has fueled endless debate among interpreters.
Yeah, I bet. Like, is it really justified to move from our finite time structure to claims about being in general?
Exactly. And does this temporal framework really capture how, say, the ancient Greeks understood being? These are big open questions because of the missing part. The precise link between Dasein's Zeitlichkeit and this broader temporality remains murky.
Before we move off temporality, there is another related concept, historicity, Geschichtlichkeit.
Right. Because Dasein is fundamentally temporal, it's also inherently historical. You don't exist in a vacuum. You exist within a specific historical context, inheriting a cultural past, a heritage, Erbe.
So history isn't just stuff in books.
No, it's lived. Authentic historical existence, for Heidegger, involves consciously taking up this heritage, engaging with it, as you project possibilities towards the future. It's an active dimension of your temporal existence, often connected to a shared community or Volk.
Okay. Now, there's one aspect of temporality and authenticity we really need to cover, being towards death. Sein zum Tode.
Absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
This isn't about being morbid or obsessed with dying.
No.
It's about recognizing and integrating your finitude, the fact that your existence is limited into how you live. It's acknowledging death as a fundamental possibility of your being, not just an event after your being.
So he distinguishes just dying from this concept.
Yes, he distinguishes the empirical event of passing away Abelben from death as an ontological structure inherent in Dasein's being. He famously calls death the possibility of the absolute impossibility of Dasein.
Wow. Possibility of the absolute impossibility? What does that mean?
It means death is a possibility that belongs uniquely to you, but it's the possibility where all your other possibilities cease. It's the end of your potentiality for being. And this possibility isn't just waiting at the end. It permeates your entire life as a possibility.
And he describes this possibility in several ways, right?
Yes. He characterizes death as Dasein's own most possibility. Nobody can die your death for you. It singles you out.
Non-relational.
Non-relational. Unbezüglich. It dissolves all relations to others and the world. Certain price, its eventual happening is inevitable.
But indefinite.
Indefinite, you don't know when. And unsurpassable, unüberholbar, you can't get beyond it. It's the ultimate limit of your possibilities in the world.
Okay, so that's death as a possibility. What is being towards death, then?
Being towards death is the authentic way of relating to this own most certain yet indefinite, unsurpassable possibility. It involves anticipation.
Vorläufer. Anticipation, like expecting it.
More like running ahead towards it in thought. Living with a constant awareness of your finitude, understanding yourself as finite, and letting that awareness inform your choices and commitments. It's integrating the reality of your limited time into your existence.
As opposed to the inauthentic way.
Right. The inauthentic way, typical of the they, is to evade the thought of death. To cover it up, treat it as something that happens to other people, a mishap, or to try and forget about it in the hustle of everyday life. Constant tranquilization about death, he calls it.
So confronting finitude is key to authenticity.
Absolutely essential for Heidegger. Anticipating death shatters the illusions and distractions of the everyday. It individualizes Dasein by showing it its own most potentiality and its ultimate limit. It forces you to take responsibility for the finite choices you make in your finite time.
And anxiety, angst, plays a role here too.
Yes, the anxiety before death, not fear of dying, is what discloses this possibility authentically and motivates the move towards resolute anticipation.
There was also something about death and wholeness, Gonsight.
Yes. Dasein, as long as it exists, is always ahead of itself, always has possibilities outstanding, so it's never fully whole or complete in the way an object can be.
Right, it's always becoming.
But death represents the end of those possibilities, the point where Dasein's potentiality runs out. While you can't experience your death, and thus your completed wholeness, Heidegger argues that by anticipating death, by understanding your life in light of its end, you can grasp your existence as a finite whole.
So anticipating death lets you see your life's potential shape.
In a way, yes. It allows for an authentic understanding of your life in its entirety, even while living it. Being towards death grounds the possibility of an authentic selfhood that takes responsibility for its whole finite existence.
Okay, that's a lot on Dasein care, temporality, death.
Hmm.
Before we wrap up the core ideas, maybe briefly touch on his method, phenomenological hermeneutics.
Sure. Heidegger saw his method as phenomenological, following Husserl's call to the things themselves, but he adapted it significantly.
How so?
While Husserl focused on consciousness and how objects appear to it, Heidegger turned phenomenology into the method of ontology, the study of being. Its goal is to let the being of beings show itself, starting with the being of Dasein.
And the hermeneutics part, interpretation.
Yes, because Dasein's very being is understanding, verstehen. And understanding, for Heidegger, isn't passive. It always operates with a pre-structure. He calls it the forestructure. Forehaving, or hobby, what you already have in view, foresight, the specific angle you take, and foreconception, foregriff, the concepts you bring.
So we never approach things neutrally.
Never entirely. This leads to the famous hermeneutic circle. To understand the whole, you need to understand the parts. But to understand the parts, you need some sense of the whole.
Which sounds like a problem.
Heidegger argues it isn't a vicious circle, but the very structure of understanding itself, rooted in Dasein's being. The task isn't to escape the circle, but to enter it correctly, guided by the phenomena themselves, constantly revising your understanding.
And what about destruction? Sounds negative.
It's not destruction in the sense of tearing down randomly. It's a critical engagement with the history of philosophy, a destructuring or dismantling of layers of interpretation that have built up over time and now obscure the original questions and insights about being.
So it's about clearing the ground.
Exactly. Retrieving original insights by exposing the hidden assumptions and deviations in the tradition.
And finally, his language. All those strange words.
Yeah, the neologisms like Dasein, Zuhandenheit, Sorge, and revitalized words like Eigentlichkeit, authenticity or angst. He felt this was necessary.
Why?
Because traditional philosophical language was saturated with metaphysical assumptions, particularly the subject-object split and the focus on presence that he was trying to overcome. He needed new words to articulate these pre-conceptual structures of existence without falling back into old traps.
Makes sense, even if it makes the reading tough. Okay, so how was the book received? What's its legacy?
Well, Being in Time had a huge and almost immediate impact. It heavily influenced existentialism thinkers like Sartre, borrowed heavily, though Heidegger later distanced himself from how Sartre used his ideas.
So the existential themes resonated more than the being question itself.
Initially, for many, yes. The powerful analysis of the human condition, freedom, finitude, anxiety, responsibilities struck a chord. But its influence goes way beyond existentialism. It deeply shaped hermeneutics, especially through Gadamer, his student. And its ideas popped up in literary theory, theology, even psychology.
But still debated, right?
Oh, constantly.
Yeah.
There are ongoing arguments about almost every aspect of the precise meaning of Das, whether the focus should really be on being or on unconcealment, aletheia, whether the project is ultimately transcendental or more pragmatic.
And Heidegger himself changed his tune later, the turn.
Yes, the Kehr. In his later work, Heidegger shifted focus away from the Dasein-centric approach of being and time, suggesting its limitations. He turned more towards language and the history of being itself.
And criticisms, besides the language being hard.
Plenty. The obscurity is a major one. The failure to actually complete the project and answer the science phrase within the book itself. Methodological questions about phenomenology and hermeneutics. Some see traces of ontological idealism does be rear. Being depend too much on Dasein's understanding. And the distinction between authenticity and inauthenticity has been accused of being elitist or even having problematic political undertones, especially given Heidegger's later actions.
Right, that's a whole other dimension we haven't even touched.
A very significant and controversial one, yes.
Yeah.
But focusing on the text itself, those are some key philosophical critiques.
Okay. So to wrap up this part, being and time, unfinished, challenging, controversial, but undeniably a landmark.
Absolutely. An unfinished masterpiece, maybe, focused intently on reawakening that fundamental question of being, doing so through this incredibly detailed, groundbreaking analysis of human existence of Dasein. Its lasting impact really lies in how it articulates human finitude, freedom, responsibility, challenging readers even now to think about the meaning of their own being.
So this deep dive, we've really just scratched the surface of Heidegger's huge work, Being and Time. Trying to get at his attempt to reframe that ancient question of being by looking really closely at us, at human existence, indexing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a massive undertaking on his part, and ours just trying to summarize it.
But hopefully, for you listening, some key ideas have kind of clicked, giving you those aha moments. I mean, that shift from seeing yourself as just a thinking subject looking at the world.
To being fundamentally in the world, already engaged, already concerned, that's huge.
Yeah. And this whole idea of authenticity, not as finding a true self, but as actively taking ownership of your life, especially facing up to the pull of the they and the unavoidable fact of death.
And care, Sorge, not just as worry, but as the basic structure of how we exist, encompassing our possibilities, our given situation, our everyday entanglement.
Or that radical idea about time, that our understanding of time isn't just clocks and calendars, but this ecstatic temporality that is how we exist.
Future, past, present, all dynamically interwoven. And of course, being towards death. Not being morbid, but using the awareness of our finitude to live more decisively, more authentically, perhaps.
We know it's complex stuff, really dense, and this has just been an introduction, hitting some highlights.
Definitely just scratching the surface.
But we hope it's given you a feel for it, because despite the difficulty, being and time's exploration of these deep questions about existence, about being human, is still incredibly relevant, isn't it, for anyone curious about, well, what it all means.
It really is. It asks fundamental questions.
Ooh.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with.
Go for it.
Consider your own thrownness. You know, the specific circumstances, the history, the place you find yourself in, seemingly without choosing it. How does that shape the possibilities you see ahead for yourself? And then maybe reflect. How might a deeper, more conscious awareness of your own finitude, your own limited time, influence the choices you're making right now, today?
Powerful questions to ponder. If any of these ideas sparked something, we definitely encourage you to maybe pick up an introduction to Heidegger or explore some related philosophy. There's a lot more there.
For sure.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us into the challenging world of being and time.